Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're doing something a bit different. We're going to dissect how to take kindness, which usually feels like a passive reflex, and completely reframe it into a highly strategic tool. To do this, we're pulling from the rather harsh historical insights of the 16th century philosopher Niccolo Machiavelli. We'll be mixing his ruthless political realism right in with modern workplace psychology. Let's get into it. Okay, so let's dive into a deeply relatable pain point. You know the feeling, right? You twist yourself into all these useful shapes for everybody else, you cover for your colleagues, you say yes when your brain is screaming no, but why does it leave you feeling completely burned out, neglected, and frankly unappreciated? We've all been taught that decent people get rewarded eventually, but actually the reality is often the exact opposite.
So, to figure out how to escape this exhaustion, we'll quickly run through our agenda for today. First, we'll look at the Trap of Niceness. Then, Machiavelli's Effectual truth, using kindness as a strategy, the illusion of fairness, setting boundaries, and finally, being respected rather than loved.
All right, Section 1, the Trap of Niceness, being nice versus being agreeable.
Now, there is an absolutely crucial distinction we need to make right off the bat. Being pleasant means you're respectful, you're calm, and you're easy to work with, but only when others respect your boundaries. Being a pushover, on the other hand, means you maintain that exact same calm and helpfulness even after your boundaries have been totally trampled on. Make no mistake, one is a solid personality trait, and the other is just a complete psychological collapse. Society trains us to feel ashamed for introducing tension, but avoiding tension at all costs, well, that just turns you into a doormat.
Moving on to Section 2, Machiavelli's Effectual truth and the actual mechanics of power.
You've probably heard the name Machiavelli, and his ideas were, honestly, incredibly provocative. He wrote his famous treatise, The Prince, back in 1513. It was published posthumously in 1532, and then by 1559, it was completely banned by the Catholic Church, placed right on the index of prohibited books. Why? Well, because Machiavelli refused to write about how people should act in some ideal world. Instead, he wrote about the effectual truth, meaning how humans actually behave. He completely exposed the real and often super uncomfortable machinery of human nature.
So, the core concept we need to grasp here is his idea of virtù. And to be clear, this isn't virtue in the traditional moral sense of being a good person. For Machiavelli, virtù is the skill, the prudence, and the ruthless resourcefulness you use to command your own life. He contrasted this with fortuna, which is just unpredictable luck or the rushing river of chance. His argument was that those who operate with calculation, rather than just blind sweetness, are the ones who actually advance and secure respect. You literally cannot just leave your life up to the rushing river of chance.
He applied this kind of cold calculation to absolutely everything. He broke down the world into highly practical categories of power structures: hereditary, mixed, new, civil, and ecclesiastical. Notice what's missing? He completely ignored traditional ideals of what a good or corrupt government should be. Instead, he focused entirely on the specific skills required to maintain control in each unique scenario. It's just pure, unfiltered pragmatism.
Which brings us to Section 3, kindness as a strategy, treating it as a meticulously controlled tool.
Now, consider this pretty radical redefinition. Machiavelli essentially viewed niceness, at least the way most of us practice it unconditionally, as strategic incompetence. Think about it. If you give away your time, your energy, and your power without any calculation whatsoever, it doesn't make you a saint, it makes you easy prey. Giving away unconditional kindness doesn't breed gratitude, it actually breeds entitlement. Pretty soon, people stop saying thank you and start asking, okay, what else do I get? To survive all of this, he advised leaders to be highly adaptable. He notoriously used this brilliant metaphor. You've got to be the lion to employ brute force and terrify the wolves, and you also have to be the fox, using cunning and deception to recognize traps. If you are always just a gentle, agreeable lamb, well, you're going to be eaten. You have to know exactly when to employ harshness and when to use strategy to outwit the people trying to take advantage of your good nature.
So let's look at how smart, highly calculating people actually use kindness. They reward to create loyalty. They forgive, but specifically to disarm their enemies and create a social debt. They stay silent about mistakes to plant unease or show humility just to lower an opponent's guard. And most importantly, they withhold kindness so that when they finally give it, it is treated as a rare, earned prize. In this mindset, kindness isn't just a default character trait. It is a meticulously controlled strategy.
Moving to Section 4, the illusion of fairness, where we'll debunk some deeply ingrained social norms.
There's a really powerful quote from the source material that hits the nail on the head. If everyone receives the same reward, you are no longer leading. You are handing out charity. Wow. Indiscriminate kindness is basically poison disguised as an angel. Because if you treat a lazy opportunist with the exact same warmth and rewards as your most loyal, hardworking ally, you completely ruin the motivation of your strongest people. You see, when kindness becomes too cheap, it loses its weight entirely. It's just like printing too much money. It causes inflation and completely devalues the currency. Handing out favors to everyone devalues your generosity in the exact same way. Opportunistic people won't honor your sacrifice. They'll just begin to treat your generosity as your mandatory, expected obligation to them. So how do we actually apply this 16th century cold reality to our lives today?
That brings us to Section 5, Setting Boundaries and Handling Difficult Conversations.
According to modern guides, like the framework from the Fair Work Ombudsman, successfully handling difficult conversations requires a clear structure. You have to prepare, manage your emotions, execute your plan, and, this is the critical part, enforce consequences afterward. Notice how manage your emotions aligns perfectly with Machiavelli's philosophy? Emotion absolutely must surrender to principle. You literally cannot secure your boundaries if you're constantly being swayed by an overwhelming desire to just keep the peace.
Now, enforcing these boundaries requires a degree of what society often labels as harshness. But listen, this harshness is clarity. It's not cruelty. Prolonged softness quietly kills a system from the inside out, because the lazy push the boundaries while the competent just get frustrated and walk away. Creating limits and actually enforcing the consequences is the structural frame that holds your life, your team, or your organization upright. Punishment or enforcement is a warning that protects the loyal allies you actually want to keep around. Without limits, destruction is pretty much inevitable. Finally, we arrive at Section 6, Respected rather than loved, the ultimate choice.
There's a very stark contrast to consider here. Being loved by everyone is built on incredibly fragile emotions. It relies on your endless sacrifice. And the absolute second you say no, that love often vanishes straight into resentment. Being respected, on the flip side, is built on firm boundaries, discipline, structural order, and clear consequences. Affection changes faster than the weather, but respect establishes a lasting structural order.
And this leads to Machiavelli's absolute most famous and probably most misunderstood argument. If you must choose between being loved and being feared, choose to be feared. Now, in our modern workplace context, being feared definitely doesn't mean ruling with violence. It means being deeply, unshakably respected. People hold back from crossing your lines not because they love you, but because they fear disappointing you. And they know for a fact your boundaries carry real consequences.
The likable person is honestly constantly exhausted. They are always performing, always maintaining an image, always trying to please every single person in the room. But the respected, or feared, person, they wield a silent power. They don't need to yell, and they certainly don't need to perform. Their simple no carries actual weight, and their silence alone is often enough to make others adjust their behavior.
So I want to leave you with this final provocative thought to reflect on as you navigate your relationships and your workplace this week. Will you continue giving without boundaries just to be loved? Or will you take a page out of Machiavelli's book, step out of the trap of niceness, and finally sharpen your kindness into a strategy to be truly respected? The choice is entirely yours. Thanks for joining me for this explainer.